Week 15 in the NFL, and it's coming down to the wire. 3 games to play, 1 place to be. It's the NFL on Fox. Down in Tampa, the Battle of the Bays.
In my last devlog, I explained my decision to not make a purely 2D game. But in this one, I'm going to explain as to why I really do envision Gridiron Masters 98 as a 3D game, but not yet. In order to explain this, we have to look at formations. Why formations, you might ask? This all starts with formations. What is a formation? Well, in most football games, they are just where the players line up before the play starts. Simple. I didn't have a conventional real-time engine, so I had to find what exactly it meant to be in an offset eye compared to a traditional eye formation. What did that slight change in position mean without a real-time engine to actually change their position in physical space? My solution was to basically turn formations into a grid where each cell influenced the probabilities of the play. That way, moving the QB closer to the line or splitting the running back out wide had an actual effect. It was neat on its own, but the way I did it ended up creating too many extra numbers to consider and track. It was antithetical to my design principle of depth without complexity, not to mention having to make players stand out in the soup of numbers. On top of that, I had to make a simple way to call plays each down that was faster than traditional play calling, because I made the decision to not allow user FastSim. This was the impetus to get me to where I am now. I was caught up in these problems and felt it was going to take too much time to fully test and refine this very granular system. I didn't want to take all that time only to end up with a time-consuming, albeit detailed, formation and play calling system. This also forced me to consider how much time I had left to finish the first version of the game. I still don't have a field animation engine, nor a presentation engine, stadiums, sound effects, etc. Furthermore, I still have to polish the actual roster building part of the game too, and the coach contracts and pieces of that are still a little raw. I still need the college and pro screens. I also have to do another pass on the UI and the scene structure of the game. And so, because of all that, I decided to put a giant "not yet" on all the field stuff. I would love to have a game engine like a slightly higher fidelity Game Day 2005 or Game Breaker 2001. But I would rather put time into the world off the field, as it's pretty bare bones right now. In addition, the weekly recap show already works, but could be polished to be more interesting in the time I have left. I would rather lead with that foot than build a crappy field engine or convoluted grid-based play-calling system. What I made instead was something I call drive strategies, which is a way of selecting the strategic archetype for the next series of plays without having to pick plays on every down. Maybe it's running the ball or quick passes on offense, and conservative or aggressive on defense. Each archetype has a counter, and the goal is to counter the other team. It's not random though. The opposing team follows a sequence of strategies called a playbook. As you counter the opposing team, this sequence is revealed. It doesn't tell you where in the sequence it is, but you can see the list of strategies it's going to call in the game. To break up the predictability, the AI team doesn't always follow the playbook. They have a chance of improvising and picking something different. The more of their strategies you have revealed, the more likely it is that they improvise, which should make it more difficult to completely reveal their strategies. I think it's a neat way to remain active during an otherwise passive simulation. That's the minigame that happens on top. What is going on underneath is more traditional. Your roster sets the base probabilities for the outcome of the plays. When you pick your strategy, you can also pick your featured package, which will be quite important as having 3 or 4 wide receivers is going to help your passing much more than having more running backs or tight ends. This is essentially the simple replacement for my formation system. Where players are in the depth chart will also affect the outcomes. To top it all off, there's a list of settings called the game plan, which I made into a separate coach duty. Whoever is in charge of this will set more specific settings for individual plays, like the distribution of running back skill to pass outcomes, the chance for quarterback runs, the distribution of linebacker skill to run outcomes versus pass outcomes, the triggers for when to punt, go for it on 4th, go for 2 onsides, and more. This has to be set before the game though, so it better be right for the next opponent, or else you may have a suboptimal game. This replaces play calling at a granular level while still giving you some control over it. What results is a system that has a fair amount of control, but also doesn't make the user feel the urge to fast sim. Games are done in much less time than a conventional game, but they are still informed by your decisions even on a granular level. Teams that are substantially weaker than the opponent will probably have a hard time overcoming the weight of a strong roster, and so their only hope is to counter the other team's strategies. It should make any lopsided game winnable, but not without some major luck and predictive skill. While this isn't exactly the system I set out to make, I've become quite fond of it, and I think it could even be expanded with the presence of a real-time engine in the future. So I still absolutely am making this a 3D game, but not yet. I have to come to terms with the fact that this game I'm making now is maybe 5% of my perfect vision, if that. I need to make the best version of this game viable now, so I can start to get a return and be able to reinvest into the project and achieve more lofty goals. This game has taken a toll on me, and I have sacrificed much for it. I've not always been as efficient as I should. I've backtracked on some things and probably lost more time than I care to realize. But this being my first major game, I have to allow myself some leniency. If this were the only game project I ever worked on, I would be okay with that. I absolutely love the setting and aesthetic. I love the potential to be a place to play out all my cozy 90s sports fantasies, complete with an entire game world, NPCs, quests, exploration, and more. I want this game to be all those things, but I have to be realistic, so not yet.